My name is Ren Shizuki, and I have been reborn. As I took my first breath in this new life, the air was crisp and filled with sunlight, and I could smell the freshness of clean linen all around me. It was a huge change from the lab where I used to be, with its sterile air that always seemed to suck the life out of me, and the awful smell of chemicals that made my head spin. I had died before, betrayed by the one person I thought I could trust, and they had treated me like some kind of rare lab rat. They had taken my special gift, the ability to control and balance other people's energy, and they had ripped it apart, used it for their own gain, and destroyed it completely. But now I was alive again. And this time, I would not be a victim. I recalled every detail, the betrayal that cut deep, the countless experiments that pushed my body to the edge, and the moment it finally gave in. The researchers' hushed conversations still echoed in my mind, their words sending shivers down my spine as they spoke of my gift, a rarity that hadn't surfaced in millennia. And then there was Kael Draven, the Alpha Commander whose power had spiraled out of control, ultimately leading to a devastating explosion that took his life in my past existence. His memory lingered, a haunting reminder of the dangers that lay ahead. The whispers of my gift, the weight of my past, and the fear of my future all swirled together, a potent mix that threatened to consume me. Yet, I held on to these memories, for in them lay the key to understanding my true potential and the destiny that awaited me. At one point, I felt sorry for him, but now I see him as a way to move forward in my life. If I married Kael Draven, if I bound myself to him in a contract marriage, I could protect him. My ability could stabilize his energy, prevent his death. And in return, his influence and power would shield me from those who would hunt me again. It wasn't about love, at least not at that moment. It was about making it through, about surviving. But as time went on, maybe, just maybe, it could turn into something deeper, something more meaningful. The military compound loomed ahead, its steel walls gleaming under the sun. Soldiers moved with precision, their gazes sharp, but none dared approach the inner sanctum where Kael resided. When the doors opened, the air itself trembled. Kael Draven stood tall, broad-shouldered, his aura oppressive. Power crackled around him like a storm barely contained, the atmosphere vibrating with his instability. His eyes, sharp and cold, locked onto me with a predator's focus. Kael's voice was low and menacing as he spoke. What brings an Omega to this place? I tilted my head slightly, more out of respect than surrender, and said, I've come to suggest a marriage of convenience, a proposal that could benefit us both, if you're willing to consider it. The silence that followed was deafening. Kael's lips twisted into a mixture of amusement and contempt. Marriage, he repeated, his voice laced with sarcasm. Do you really think I've got time to bother with something as insignificant as that? I locked eyes with him, my stare unflinching. This isn't trivial. It's necessary, I said firmly. Your power is volatile, and if you don't get it under control, it will be the death of you. But I can help you if you let me. His eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. Help? You dare claim you can control me? Not command, but guidance, I said quietly. Find balance, bring calm, and keep safe. For a moment, his energy surged, the room trembling as if the walls themselves feared collapse. I held my ground, letting the storm wash over me. Then, as if testing me, Kael let it recede. He looked at me and said, You're either not thinking clearly, or you have some information that nobody else is aware of. I allowed a faint smile. Perhaps both. He looked at me intensely, his eyes seeming to bore into my soul, as if he could figure out all my secrets just by staring. But he wouldn't discover anything, at least not for now. He finally broke his silence, his voice low and menacing. If you're lying to me, he growled, you're a dead man. I'm aware of that, I said calmly, but if I'm being honest, it could save you. The air was thick with tension, and it felt like it was cutting right through us. Then, out of nowhere, Kael let out this laugh. It was low and rough, and it sent a chill running down my spine. All right then, he said, let's find out if you're really worth taking a chance on. That night, as I lay in unfamiliar quarters within the compound, I felt the weight of my decision. I had bound myself to Kael Draven, a man feared by all, a man whose power threatened to consume him. But I was not afraid. This was my path.
My vow.
In this life, I would protect Kael Draven. And in doing so, I would protect myself, even if it meant walking into the storm. The compound was alive with whispers the day after I signed the contract. Soldiers moved with precision, but their eyes followed me, curious and wary. An Omega walking freely beside Kael Draven was unheard of. I tuned out the curious glances from others, my attention fixed on the man who seemed to dominate every hallway, his presence as intense and foreboding as a storm about to unleash its fury. Kael summoned me to his training hall. The space was vast, lined with reinforced walls scarred by past battles. He stood at the center, his aura flaring, energy sparking against the steel. "Ren Shizuki," Kael said, his voice echoing through the room. "You're saying you can help me get my powers under control. Prove it." I paused for just a moment before taking a step forward. The weight of his power was crushing, making it hard to breathe, but I still tried to connect with him using my gift. The turmoil within him was intense, like a wild storm, and it fought against my attempt to reach out. Kael's eyes narrowed. "You're trembling." "I'm a person," I said, trying to sound calm even though I was feeling really stretched to my limits. But I was determined not to give in. I wasn't going to crack under the pressure. Slowly, carefully, I guided the energy, channeling the excess into calmer currents. The air shifted, the oppressive weight lifting. Kael's breathing steadied, his shoulders relaxing. For a moment, silence hung between us. Then Kael spoke, softer than before. "You did it." I let out a breath, my chest feeling tight. "I told you I could," I said, trying to sound calm. His gaze lingered on me, sharp and assessing. "You're reckless, Ren Shizuki. Most would run from me. You walk into the storm." Our eyes locked, and I said, "It's because I'm aware that storms can be controlled, and I'm not willing to let fear take over my life." Kael's lips curled up into a mixture of a smile and admiration. "You're not like the others," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. As night began to fall, Kael finally let me into his planning room, the space where he devised his military tactics. The walls were almost completely covered in maps, each one filled with notes about past battles and the movements of his troops. When I walked in, his officers couldn't help but stare at me, their faces filled with skepticism and doubt. But Kael just gave them a sharp glance, and they immediately fell silent, their eyes darting back to the maps in front of them. He talked about the challenges he was facing and the people who were trying to take advantage of his weaknesses. I paid close attention to what he was saying, taking in all the information. When he started to get worked up again, I helped calm him down, doing it in a gentle but firm way. Kael couldn't help but notice, and for a brief moment, his eyes seemed to soften, ever so slightly. "You're making it look effortless," he said, his voice low and gentle. "I know it's not easy," I said, "but I think it's worth the trouble." I saw a different side of him, one that was tired of being in control and hated being feared by others, a person who was struggling under the weight of his own power. As I lay there, wide awake in the dead of night, my mind started to wander to the choices I'd made. I'm Ren Shizuki, and I tied myself to Kael Draven, but it wasn't because I had feelings for him, it was because I had no other option. As I felt his stormy emotions calm down under my touch, it hit me that something was starting to shift. Trust. Fragile, tentative, but real. And in this world where betrayal had once destroyed me, trust was the rarest gift of all. I had barely signed the contract when I felt its weight bearing down on me. Committing to Kael Draven was a huge deal. He was a man who commanded respect and inspired fear, with a power that could destroy entire cities if he lost control. Now, he belonged to me, just as I belonged to him. It was a daunting thought, knowing that my fate was tied to his, and that our bond could have far-reaching consequences. The ink may have been fresh, but the reality of our situation was already starting to sink in. Kael Draven was a force to be reckoned with, and I had just agreed to be his partner, for better or for worse. We sat across from each other in his office, the steel walls reflecting the sharp lines of his posture. Kael's gaze was steady, his aura simmering just beneath the surface. Ren Shizuki, he said, his tone sharp and firm. For this marriage to actually work, we're going to need some ground rules, things we can both agree on and stick to no matter what. I nodded. Agreed. Kael moved in close, his eyes locked on mine. You need to stay inside the compound, he said, his voice firm. Don't even think about going outside without my okay. The people who are after me, they're not kidding around, they'll stop at nothing, and if they get their hands on you, they'll use you to get to me. I locked eyes with him, my stare unwavering. I'm staying, but don't think for a second I'll be treated like a captive. I'm your partner, your equal, not something you own. His lips curved into something between amusement and challenge. You negotiate like a soldier. I talk business like I'm breaking free from chains. I said clause by clause, we shaped the terms of our bond. Kael's eyes locked onto mine, his voice firm. Don't hide your abilities from me, he said. If you can help me gain control, I need to tap into that power completely. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly nodded my head. All right, I agree, I said finally. But let's get one thing straight. I'm only doing this with you, and no one else is going to be involved. Kael's face turned stern, his eyes narrowing. You really think I'd let someone else have you? His voice was so intense that it made me shiver. That's when it hit me. Kael Draven's need to control everything wasn't just about being in charge. It was about staying alive. BY evening, the contract was complete. Kael's signature was a swirl of confidence on the page, the dark ink a stark contrast to the plain paper. He passed me the pen, his eyes locked on mine. Ren Shizuki, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Remember, once your name is on that paper, there's no going back. The decision is final, and there's no changing your mind. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. I know, I said, and I accept. The moment my name joined his, something shifted. The air around us seemed to settle, as if acknowledging the bond we had forged. Kael's eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the turmoil that usually swirled around him was still. He spoke in a low, calm tone. You belong to me now. Our eyes locked, and I stood my ground. You're mine. Don't ever forget that, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. As I settled into my new place that night, my mind started racing about what was coming next. I knew tying my fate to Kael Draven's was a crazy risk, but it was one I had to take. It was the only way forward, no matter how scary it seemed. But as I thought back to how my touch had seemed to calm him down, I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to our connection than just trying to make it through this together. Perhaps, in time, something more would grow. For the time being, I had made a promise to myself, to keep Kael Draven safe. And by doing that, I would also be protecting my own well-being. Life inside the compound was a constant reminder of discipline and fear. Soldiers moved with precision, but their eyes always lingered on me. An Omega walking freely beside Kael Draven was something they had never seen before. At first, I ignored their whispers. My focus was on Kael himself, the man whose aura pressed against me like a storm threatening to break. As Kael walked in from his training session, you could tell something was off. His energy was all over the place, and the soldiers with him looked really nervous, keeping a safe distance. I sensed that something was wrong with him even before he got to the room, like he was giving off this unstable vibe. The way the soldiers' faces had lost all their color made it clear they were worried about what might happen next. Ren Shizuki, Kael's voice was low and rough, a clear warning. Take a step back, don't come any closer. But I didn't. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, and reached out with my ability. The storm inside him lashed against me, violent and untamed, but I held firm. Slowly, carefully, I guided it, channeling the excess into calmer currents. Kael's breathing slowed. His shoulders relaxed. The oppressive weight in the room lifted. When his eyes met mine, they were no longer wild but steady. You did it again, he said, disbelief lacing his tone. I nodded, feeling a knot in my chest. I told you I can help, I said, trying to sound calm. Kael just stood there, looking at me like he was trying to figure out how the tough guy he was supposed to be fit with the vulnerable person in front of him. Then, out of nowhere, he let out a laugh. It was quick and a bit rough, but it sounded more like he was relieved than making fun of me. "You're reckless, Ren Shizuki," Kael said. "But perhaps that recklessness is what I need." Days passed, and I began to notice subtle changes. Kael no longer kept his distance. He allowed me into his routines, his training sessions, even his strategy meetings. Soldiers whispered about it, their disbelief plain, but Kael silenced them with a single look. When nighttime came and his emotions started to get out of control, I was right there by his side. I helped calm him down, turning the turmoil into peace. And each time I did, Kael's faith in me grew stronger, even if he never actually said it. He just showed it in his own way, trusting me more and more to be the one to soothe the storms. Instead, it showed in small gestures. A nod of acknowledgement when I entered the room. A faint smile when I succeeded in calming him. A silence that was no longer hostile, but contemplative. One evening, as we shared a rare meal together, Kael spoke. "Ren Shizuki," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You see, people are afraid of me, and I've always wondered, do you know why that is?" I stared back at him, our eyes locking. "It's because your power is all over the place," I said. "And, to be honest, they just don't get it." Kael's lips curved into a bitter smile. "They see me as a weapon. A beast barely contained. Even my own soldiers keep their distance. But you," he paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You walk into the storm without hesitation." I put my chopsticks down, my voice firm. "I know that storms can be controlled, and I won't let fear run my life." Kael just sat there, not saying a word. Then, he leaned back in his chair, and his face didn't give away anything. But I could sense it, this tiny change in the way he felt, like he was okay with something, even if he didn't show it. Kael's voice was barely above a whisper as he said, "You're not like the others, and maybe, just maybe, that's what's going to save me." I couldn't shake off what he had said. It kept playing on my mind as I lay there in the dark, wide awake. I had bound myself to Kael Draven not out of love, but out of necessity. Yet, as I felt the storm inside him quiet under my touch, I realized something had changed. Trust. Fragile, tentative, but real. And in this world where betrayal had once destroyed me, trust was the rarest gift of all. The compound had begun to feel almost familiar. Soldiers no longer stared at me with open disbelief, though whispers still followed wherever I walked. My presence beside Kael Draven was becoming routine, even if no one dared to call it normal. But routine did not mean safety. As I walked down the hallway that evening, I saw a face in the crowd that made my heart skip a beat. It was a man with a gaze that lingered a bit too long, and an expression that seemed to hold a spark of recognition, one that I didn't want to acknowledge. My chest felt like it was constricting, tightening up with a sense of unease. I knew that look all too well. It was one that I had seen before in a different time, a different life. It was the same look that the researchers had given me when they had taken me to those cold, sterile rooms and strapped me down, subjecting me to who knew what. The memory of it still sent shivers down my spine, and now, seeing that look again, I couldn't help but feel a wave of anxiety wash over me. I couldn't shake off the feeling of discomfort. It lingered, refusing to let go, even after I had turned away. I sat in Kael's office, staring at the maps laid out on his desk, but my mind kept wandering. He seemed more at ease tonight, his presence steady and calm, probably thanks to my influence, but I just couldn't concentrate. Kael noticed. His sharp gaze missed nothing. "Ren Shizuki," he said, his voice low. "You're distracted." I hesitated, then forced myself to meet his eyes. Someone was watching me today. Too closely. It felt familiar. Kael's expression hardened instantly. "Who?" "I don't know his name," I admitted. "But I've seen eyes like his before. In my last life, they belonged to men who wanted to use me. To break me." Kael's anger ignited, and the storm brewing inside him surged forward. "You think they're hiding here in my own compound?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But I can't ignore the feeling." Kael stood up, and suddenly the room felt smaller. "Ren Shizuki, I need you to listen to me," he said firmly. "From now on, you're under my care. Nobody lays a hand on you without going through me first. His voice was calm, but it was clear he meant business. His words were fierce, but beneath them I heard something else, a promise. I nodded, though the unease remained. I believe you, but I also know how far they'll go. In my last life, betrayal came from the one I trusted most. If they suspect my ability again, they'll stop at nothing. Kael's eyes narrowed, his storm simmering. Then let them try. I'll crush anyone who dares. That night, I lay awake, memories pressing against me like ghosts. Needles, restraints, the cold betrayal of a lover's smile. I had sworn this life would be different. I had sworn I would protect myself. And yet, the shadows of the past were already reaching for me. But this time, I was not alone. Kael Draven's storm was dangerous, unpredictable, but it was also a shield. And as long as I stood beside him, I would not be dragged back into the darkness. Still, I could not shake the feeling that the past was not finished with me. The alarm bells rang through the compound like a scream. Soldiers rushed past me, their faces pale, their movements frantic. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I could feel it. The storm inside Kael Draven was breaking. I ran toward the training grounds, the air thick with tension. When I arrived, the sight froze me in place. Kael stood at the center, his aura blazing like wildfire. Energy crackled around him, tearing into the reinforced walls, scorching the ground beneath his feet. The men stood back, guns at the ready, but they were no match for the power that was closing in on him. "Commander Draven," someone yelled, but Kael just stared off into space, his eyes wide with a crazy look and his breath coming in short gasps. The storm was raging on inside him now. I stepped forward. "Kael." His gaze snapped to me, and for a moment I saw recognition, but it was drowned by the chaos inside him. The energy surged, a violent wave that threatened to crush everything in its path. I reached out with my ability, my heart pounding. The storm lashed against me, fierce and unrelenting. My knees buckled under the weight, but I refused to let go. "Back off, Ren Shizuki," Kael snarled, his voice rough from the energy surging through his body. "I'm warning you. I'll take you down." I stood my ground, my voice barely above a whisper. "No," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "You won't do that. I won't let you." The energy clawed at me, burning through my veins, but I held firm. Slowly, carefully, I guided it, channeling the excess into calmer currents. It resisted, wild and violent, but I pushed harder, pouring every ounce of strength into stabilizing him. Kael's chest stopped heaving so hard. His shoulders quit shaking and relaxed. The storm was dying down now, the loud crackles getting softer and softer until all that was left was a quiet buzz. When our eyes locked, the wildness in his was gone, replaced by a steady gaze. Kael's voice was filled with disbelief as he said, "You saved me." I exhaled, my chest tight, my body trembling from the strain. "I told you I could." For a brief moment, there was silence between us, the only sound being the far-off shouts of soldiers. Then Kael moved in closer, his hand closing around my shoulder, his touch strong and steady, like an anchor holding me in place. "Ren Shizuki," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You stepped into the storm and grabbed me, pulling me to safety. I've never had anyone do that for me before." I looked him straight in the eye, without backing down, because nobody else can. As the scene around us died down and the soldiers went their separate ways, Kael stayed right by my side, his presence exuding a sense of calmness that was more stable than I'd ever sensed from him before. "You risked your life," he said. "Why?" I paused, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's because I won't let you go. In my past life, I lost you to this storm. I was powerless to stop it back then. But this time, I have a chance to change things." Kael's eyes narrowed, searching mine. "You speak as if you've seen my death." I took a deep breath, the words getting stuck in my throat. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth, not just yet, so I just stayed quiet, letting my silence convey everything I couldn't say out loud. Kael's grip on my shoulder got tighter. You're hiding something, Ren Shizuki, and I'm going to figure out what it is. But for now, I guess I should be thanking you. I owe you one big time. That night, as I lay awake, exhaustion pulling at me, I thought of the bond that had formed between us. Kael Draven wasn't just a person in charge anymore. He wasn't just a big storm. He was a person who had put his trust in me, even if it was just for a little while. And I had saved him. For the first time, I felt something beyond survival. Something fragile, dangerous, and undeniable. Hope. The compound was quiet that night, but my mind was anything but. Sleep eluded me, chased away by memories I had tried to bury. In my last life, betrayal had come with a smile. The man I loved had whispered promises of eternity, only to sell me to those who saw me as nothing more than a rare specimen. His voice still haunted me, soft and poisonous, echoing in the silence. I clenched my fists. I had sworn this life would be different, yet the shadows of the past were stirring again. The next morning, a man showed up out of nowhere. He didn't have any symbols or signs to show who he worked for, but what he said was pretty clear. Ren Shizuki, he said, his eyes seeming to hold a secret. Some people still recall what you're capable of, and they'll be coming for you again, he warned. His voice was low and even, but it sent a shiver down my spine. Then he paused, a sly smile spreading across his face, making my stomach turn. Unless, he continued, his tone dripping with an unspoken threat, you decide to work with us. My heart sank, and I felt a familiar knot in my stomach. The tone was unmistakable, the same one that had haunted me before. It was like a dark shadow creeping back in, threatening to pull me under. His words cut deep, echoing with a sense of betrayal that I thought I'd left behind. The nightmare I'd tried so hard to escape seemed to be closing in around me once again. I stood up straight and looked them dead in the eye. I'm not going to be your test subject anymore, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. The messenger's smile widened. We'll see when I told Kael Draven. His reaction was immediate. His aura flared, the storm inside him rising with fury. Who had the nerve to come up to you? Kael asked angrily, his tone cutting. I hesitated. I don't know his name, but he knew too much. He spoke as if he had seen me before. Kael's eyes narrowed, his storm simmering dangerously. They think they can take you from me? They think they can use you. I grabbed his arm, trying to calm him down before things got out of hand. Kael, just hear me out, I said, my voice firm but gentle. I've been through something like this before in my past life. I was betrayed, sold out, and used. It was a nightmare. And I'm not going to let it happen again. Not this time around. His eyes gentled just a little. Ren Shizuki, why didn't you tell me earlier? I didn't want to be a bother, but things have changed. They're on the move now, and honestly, I'm in over my head. I could really use some help here. Kael's hand wrapped tightly around mine, giving me a sense of stability. You don't have to face anything by yourself now, he said, his voice calm and reassuring. If anyone tries to hurt you, they'll have to go through me first. I couldn't shake off what Kael had said. It kept playing on my mind as I lay there, wide awake that night. In my last life, betrayal had destroyed me. But now, standing beside Kael Draven, I felt something different. His storm was dangerous, unpredictable, but it was also a shield. Perhaps the past would always echo. Perhaps betrayal would always haunt me. But this time, I was not alone. And this time, I would fight back. The message the messenger gave me was really scary, but then something even more frightening happened. Reports began to surface. Whispers among Kael Draven's officers, fragments of intelligence intercepted from enemy factions. They spoke of hidden facilities, places where Omegas had been taken, experimented on, discarded. I was familiar with those areas, having experienced life and death in one of them. Kael summoned me to his strategy chamber late one night. Maps covered the walls, but this time, the markings were not battlefronts. They were coordinates. Ren Shizuki, Kael said, his voice cutting through the air. We've stumbled upon something big, a secret facility hidden deep in the northern mountains. What's weird is that there's no sign of any insignia or official record, but the reports we've got match what you told us exactly. My chest tightened. A research lab. Kael's eyes narrowed. You've seen it before. I swallowed hard. Not that one. But they're all the same. Cold walls. Needles. Restraints. They'll do anything to break someone like me. His anger sparked, a storm brewing inside him. Do they really think they can take you away from me again? Do they really think they can use you for their own gain? I grabbed his arm, trying to calm him down before things got out of hand. Kael, just hear me out, I said, my voice firm but gentle. What I can do, it's not just unusual, it's highly sought after. And that means there are people who will do whatever it takes to get their hands on it. Kael's gaze burned into mine. Then we'll burn them first. Days later, we stood before the facility. Hidden in the mountains, its walls were reinforced, its gates guarded by soldiers who bore no insignia. Kael's presence was a weapon in itself. His aura pressed against the compound, shaking its foundations. The guards faltered, fear plain in their eyes. The turmoil within him was building, a fierce and unpredictable force. I reached out, soothing the savage emotions, guiding them into peaceful waters. As one, we pressed on, our steps steady and calm. The air inside was icy and had a sterile feel to it. There was a strong smell of chemicals that seemed to stick to the walls, making my chest feel tight. It brought back memories that I thought I had long forgotten, memories that I'd tried to keep buried deep down. Kael's touch was gentle as his hand brushed against mine, calming my nerves. Ren Shizuki, he whispered softly, his voice reassuring. You're okay. I've got you. I'm right here. We found records. Files filled with names, abilities, experiments. Some were marked as failures, others as successes. My stomach twisted as I read them. I breathed the words quietly. They've finally found what they've been looking for. Someone like me, after all these years, centuries even. A shiver ran down my spine as I added. And now, they're aware that I'm out here, that I exist. Kael's temper erupted, his anger barely held in check. We wiped them out completely, he growled. Every last trace, every single record. Together, we burned the files, destroyed the equipment, tore down the walls that had held so many captive. As the fire destroyed the building, I realized that was just the start of it. That night, I was back in the compound, and Kael was standing right in front of me, his presence feeling calm and steady, like nothing was bothering him, as I reached out to sense his emotions. Ren Shizuki, he said, his voice steady and strong. I promise you, I'll never let anyone lock you up again. Not as long as I'm alive. I locked eyes with him, my heart racing. And I promise, I'll keep you safe, no matter how crazy things get, how intense the storm around you becomes. Everything else just faded away, and for a brief moment, nothing else mattered. The darkness of past memories, the threats lurking in the shadows, all seemed so far away. In that moment, we discovered something more powerful than fear, a connection that was surprisingly strong. The attack came at dawn. The compound was hit with a series of explosions, causing the walls to shake violently as the enemy launched a massive attack. Our soldiers rushed to defend their positions, but I was shocked by the intensity of the assault. It was like nothing I had ever experienced before. The force of the enemy's advance was overwhelming, and I could feel the ground trembling beneath my feet as they pushed forward with relentless energy. At the center of it all stood Kael Draven. His aura blazed, unstable and violent, tearing into the battlefield with raw power. The enemy faltered under his strength, but I could see it. The storm inside him was breaking loose. If he lost control now, he would destroy everything. I rushed to his side, my heart racing wildly, and called out his name. Kael. His eyes locked onto mine, frantic and pleading. Ren Shizuki, stay away. I don't know how much longer I can keep it under control. I didn't hang around, though. Instead, I used my ability to reach out and feel the storm's fury. It was more intense than ever, and I could tell it was trying to overwhelm us. The storm's power was incredible, and it felt like it was going to engulf us at any moment. And then something new happened. The battlefield was filled with energy, not just Kael's, but the powers of other alphas clashing around us. Their strength bled into the air, chaotic and uncontrolled. My ability reacted instinctively, pulling at those currents, channeling them alongside Kael's. It was overwhelming. My body trembled, my veins burned, but I refused to let go. Kael's storm was getting out of control. It was going to burst loose at any moment. Ren, stop right there. You're going to get yourself killed. I won't, I whispered softly, trying to calm the energy down. Not this time, I said to myself, determined to keep everything in balance. I guided the currents, weaving Kael's unstable power with the others, channeling them into harmony. The battlefield shifted, explosions dimmed, the chaos stilled. Soldiers stared in disbelief as the storm quieted, contained by my touch. Kael's breathing slowed, his aura steadying. His eyes met mine, filled with shock and something deeper. He spoke in a low, rough tone. You didn't just connect with me, you reached all of them. I nodded, feeling a knot in my chest. I had to do it, or we would have lost everything that mattered. The enemy faltered, their strength broken. Kael rallied his soldiers, his voice commanding, his presence unshaken. Together, they pushed back the assault, driving the attackers into retreat. As the fighting finally came to an end, Kael turned to face me, his intense emotions subdued, his eyes fixed steadily on mine. Ren Shizuki, he said quietly. You're the one who set me free. You didn't just save me, though, you saved all of them, too. I let out a deep breath, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle in. I'll keep going no matter what, I said, my voice firm. As long as you're by my side, I'll keep pushing forward. Kael's hand closed around mine, strong and steady. I'll make sure you're never by yourself, he said, his voice firm and reassuring. As I lay there that night, feeling the weight of exhaustion, my body sore from the day's events, my mind kept wandering back to everything that had happened. I had channeled not just Kael's storm, but the powers of others. My ability was stronger than I had ever realized. But strength came with danger. The more I revealed, the more the world would covet me. But as I recalled what Kael had said, a different feeling took over, one that was more powerful than fear. Hope. It was like the tiny spark of something new and exciting, something I never thought I'd experience, and it felt almost too delicate to even hope for. Love. The compound was quiet after the battle, but the silence carried weight. The enemy had been driven back, their hidden facilities destroyed, their chains broken. Yet I knew the war was not truly over. Still, for the first time, I felt something I had never dared to hope for. Peace. I stood on the balcony overlooking the training grounds, the sunrise painting the sky in shades of gold. Beside me, Kael Draven stood tall, his aura steady under my touch. The storm that had once threatened to consume him was calm, contained, no longer a burden but a strength. Ren Shizuki, Kael said, his voice low but firm. We've faced enemies, betrayal, and death itself. And yet, you remain. I looked him straight in the eye. I made a promise to myself, to you, and to everyone who cares about you. I vowed to keep you safe, no matter what happens. And I'm going to stick to that, no matter what challenges we might face. Kael's face broke into a small, genuine smile. You've done more than just keep me safe, he said. You've given me back something I thought was gone for good. What's that? I asked softly. Hope, Kael said. And trust. The words struck me deeply. In my last life, betrayal had destroyed me. Trust had been a luxury I could not afford. But now, standing beside Kael Draven, I realized something had changed. This connection had gone way beyond just getting by. It had become something much deeper. Love. Kael reached for my hand, his grip firm, grounding. Ren Shizuki, from this day forward, you are not just my partner in contract. You are my partner in life. Whatever storms come, we face them together. My chest tightened, warmth spreading through me. And I'll keep you alive, Kael. Always. As morning broke, the warm light of the sun crept over us, slowly pushing away the darkness of past struggles. But even with the new day, the world outside didn't feel any safer. There were still those who wanted to exploit my gift, and others who were terrified of his strength. But together, we were unbreakable. As morning broke, I made a promise to myself, one that I intended to keep. My name is Ren Shizuki, and I will walk into the storm, again and again, as long as Kael Draven walks beside me. And for the first time, I believed in a future worth living. A new dawn. Listen to more such stories at blstoriesland. Like and subscribe.